Kevin Durant said it best, put Joe Flacco anywhere and he can still hoop. What he didn't say but we all already know, Deshaun Watson cannot. Okay, so why even bring him up? Well, the parallels between them extend beyond both having been Browns quarterbacks. Most recently, Flacco found himself starting in Indianapolis for an injured Anthony Richardson. He put up 359 yards, the 8th most in a single game so far this year, going 33 for 44 for 3 touchdowns and no picks, en route to a close 34-37 defeat. Meanwhile, Watson continued his miserable season, this time against the Commanders' league worst defense. He went 15 for 28 for 125 yards, a touchdown, and 7 sacks as Cleveland fell 13-34. Although neither quarterback won this week, I'm sure it's hard for the Browns not to peek a few states over and remember what they once had. Cleveland fans loved their 39-year-old quarterback and dared other teams to flack around and find out. But now they hide their faces in shame and silently nod in agreement when others call their $230 million passer a complete disaster because, well, what is there to say? Rewind to 2020, and there might not have been 2 guys in the league who would have drawn less comparisons. Analysts were already saying Flacco was nearing the end of his line before a 2-6 year with the Broncos and subsequent release after just 1 season. All the while, Watson had just had his best season statistically with the Houston Texans. JJ Watt was worried they were wasting his talents. From here though, one found a path to rejuvenation while the other to regression and, quite frankly, shame. And somehow, these opposite stories crossed in Cleveland. The whole thing is baffling. With the Jets prior, Flacco was fine but rarely impressed outside of a miracle win against the Browns in 2022. Simultaneously, Browns fans hoped Watson was simply shaking off the rust after 2 years of not playing. The next year, Flacco found himself flying into Cleveland to be the emergency starter to end the season after having not gotten a roster spot earlier. You know the story by now. He turned back the clock to when we all truly wondered if Joseph Vincent Flacco was elite. In his 5 regular season games with the Browns, he went 123 for 204, passing for 1,616 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 8 picks. It was fun times in Cleveland. Sure, they got smacked by the Texans in the wild card, but the defense was good, and the offense showed it could win a game with 4 different quarterbacks. So the natural thought was, why couldn't it win several with a guy they paid $230 million to accomplish exactly that? Obviously, that hasn't happened. At all. I wanted to look deeper into why that was. Why did things look so much better with Flacco than they currently do with Watson? So, Watson has played 5 regular season games this year, and Flacco played for 5 last season, which makes their stats fun to compare at this moment in time. But we should also give some context to what the team looked like around them. Really, not too much has changed between the groups outside a few skill players getting swapped out with others, like Jerry Jeudy for Cedric Tillman or Harrison Bryant for Jordan Akins. The biggest difference comes on the offensive line, where the 2024 Browns have lost Wyatt Teller and are swapping between an injured Jedrick Wills and an ineffective James Hudson at left tackle. The line has been getting plenty of blame in Cleveland, and it's for good reason. You go back and watch some of the plays from the 2023 Browns, and the cleanliness of the pocket for Flacco seems unreal. The numbers bear it out too. Watson is being pressured on nearly 44% of his dropbacks this year, good for 3rd most in the league. While flacking around in Cleveland, Flacco was pressured on just 31.5% of his dropbacks. However, though the tattered line absolutely has something to do with this, it's also important to note that Watson's pressure rate was still significantly higher than Flacco's last season at 37.6%. Despite the line receiving the brunt of the blame from head coach Kevin Stefanski for Watson's league-leading 26 sacks, he's tied for 3rd in time to throw at just over 3 seconds. Every other quarterback with more than 3 seconds to throw has 14 sacks or less. Flacco is obviously less athletic than Watson, but he can employ savvy footwork to buy time and work with his line to protect him. With this nice little shimmy from Flacco in his debut start for the Colts, he says to his linemen, "Let me help you help me." As he climbs the pocket, he keeps looking for receivers and makes a nice pass to move the chains. No, he doesn't look like a world-class athlete making this move, but he's using the exact right tools in his toolbox to make a world-class quarterback move. Watson seems to misunderstand which tools to use for what, like a man trying to hammer a nail with an Allen wrench. Here, against the Commanders, the Browns have a great play call in mesh to beat the cover 1 blitz they're sending. The crossing pattern from Njoku and Cooper will serve to pick off the defenders trying to follow them in man coverage. Mesh can take an extra beat to get open, since you have to wait for the receivers to hit their mesh point. But on this particular play, Watson and the Browns don't have that extra time because of Washington's pass rush. Now, I think there should be some signals to Watson that Cooper will be the guy open on this play immediately. Watch how, post-snap, the two backers who were in the space of the mesh routes crash towards the line. This means the only two guys in position to take Cooper will be this backed off corner or safety. In Watson's dropback, the safety freezes and starts to backpedal. The throw materializes as he receives the snap and hits the top of his dropback. However, instead of using a quick or off-platform throw as the tool for this job, he opts to use his legs and take his chances shooting through the middle on a 3rd and 9. He doesn't get far, and it's another late down scramble from Watson that's just a formality before yet another punt. One thing that got some hoopla this offseason was Cleveland's decision to replace offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt with former Bills OC Ken Dorsey. He was brought in to unlock Watson. So far, it seems he still hasn't cracked the code. In a vacuum, the switch seems almost nonsensical. Together, AVP and Stefanski propped up 4 different quarterbacks to wins last season, each with a variety of skills, weaknesses, and experience. Yet, with the money guaranteed and assets paid to acquire Watson, there's a desire that the team's and Watson's success go hand in hand. I think that desire is to the detriment of what has made Stefanski a successful play caller. One of the biggest pillars of Cleveland's offense throughout his tenure has been leaning on the run to open up play-action shots downfield. Since joining the Browns, Watson's play-action rate has fallen every year. In 22, he was at 28.4%, just a notch below Baker Mayfield's 28.6% from his best season in Cleveland in 2020. Today, Watson's rate is 24.9%, good for 19th most in the league. No doubt, some of that dip may be coming from getting behind in games. Can't really sell the run when you have to pass. However, last year, when Watson went 5-1 through 6 games, his play-action rate was still only 26.8%, which feels especially low when you compare it to Flacco's 32.1%. Maybe you're thinking the difference is the O-line's less effective run blocking and the absence of Nick Chubb this year. But here's the thing though, Flacco's Browns also didn't have Chubb, and were actually a less efficient running team than this cursed version with Watson. In the 5 games with Flacco, Cleveland put up 379 yards on 127 carries, good for 3 yards per attempt, and ranking last in the league. In the same number of games this year with Watson, they've put up 483 on 111 for 4.4 yards per attempt. But the Browns and Watson aren't just running play action less often, they're performing worse on them too. His 59.5% completion rate, 3.9 yards per attempt, and 60.8 grade on these concepts are all career lows. Following the loss to the Commanders, Watson said the team had to just continue taking what defenses were giving them. It's a good quote because it confuses the logic of the box score. Like, oh, the Browns' offense was anemic today, so the defense must have not given them much. Obviously, that's not the case. Good offenses can beat good defenses, and you don't need to be overly aggressive to do it. Now, it's always hard to criticize a quarterback's decisions because, well, I'm looking at the play from a completely different perspective and can just tell all of you I would have simply thrown to the open guy. But here's a throw I wanted to talk about. It's 2nd and 15, and Watson will target Jeudy on a slant. At the snap, watch as Washington's DBs backpedal into a cover 2 look, while the single high safety drops down and into Jeudy's path. All the while, the backer on the line also drops into coverage, turning the moment to throw to the receiver a tight window of opportunity. Watson tries to get it there in time, but the ball goes through both defenders' hands and luckily falls incomplete. Overall, I really don't hate the pass. The safety does a good job to give a fake step backwards at the snap before getting in the way, and if Watson does hit this, it's probably a touchdown. My critique mostly comes in how he completely locks onto this throw. Of course, that could just be the directive of the coaches. I can't know that. Either way, I think this play does a good job of illustrating why it can be so frustrating watching Watson. He's got a good idea here, and he's flashing some confidence and torque in this throw to try and get the ball through the window. But he isn't layering on top of this throw the other parts of what high-level quarterbacks do to make this play easier, like moving the safety with his eyes to open up that back part of the throw, or getting off that route to find Cooper on the stick for some yak to make the ensuing third down easier. Watson was sacked on the next play, and the Browns were forced to kick a field goal. Of course, hitting check down throws and having them turn into bigger plays isn't unique to Flacco, but it was funny to go back to his game against the Jets when he was in Cleveland and see him hit Njoku and then watch the tight end rumble downfield for a third down conversion. Occasionally, it can feel like Watson just isn't trusting his guys to make these kinds of plays. He wants to throw for all the yardage rather than find it by any means necessary. Commanders defensive lineman Jonathan Allen mentioned he thought Watson was dealing with an issue above the shoulders, saying he felt the quarterback had lost his confidence. Watson denied that, but I don't think it's a crazy accusation by any means. Watson's splits in throws under and over 2.5 seconds shed some light on where his head might be at. Throws in under 2.5 seconds are typically what's considered quick game, usually one read schemed up passes. Throws in over 2.5 seconds usually mean the quarterback had to hang in the pocket or move through multiple reads. Watson grades out as the 10th best quarterback on these quick throws, but he drops to 29th in throws that take longer to develop. For me, this tells the story of a guy who still has the physical talent to make the throws, but doesn't trust himself to make things happen out of structure. We like to think of Watson as a guy who thrives when extending plays, but statistically, this is actually where he's weakest right now. He'll scramble for 5 yards on a third down when they need 9, he'll force balls deep, and sometimes he just seems to use the wrong passes for the situation. This play caught my eye. The Browns run a play-action rollout with a little screen pass to Njoku on the same side. Watch Watson whip the ball behind the tight end, never giving him a chance. It's not the exact same play, but check out how Flacco delivers a nice soft touch pass to Njoku cutting across the field. His throw choice here gives Njoku an extra beat to get extra separation before securing the ball. The decision to throw a bullet or a lob pass isn't an elite quarterback trait. It's just a normal piece of development. But when you're not playing free, have your mind in a different place, and the whole world is watching you wanting you to fail, like the position Watson is seemingly in, your body may not make those obvious choices. What should be instinct gets jumbled up and takes an extra split second to access. And I think that's what's being missed most between Watson and Flacco. There was a freeness to Flacco, which, sure, that meant he was going to throw some picks, but it also meant he was getting the ball out quick and decisively, trusted the skill players around him, and could make the deep throws. Watson instead looks more like me at 4 p.m. at work on a Friday. Sluggish, indecisive, and ultimately not getting a whole lot done. Fortunately for me though, my performance isn't broadcasted on national television. I think the only way this situation gets better is if the Browns finally pull the plug and bench him. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to give it a like if you did enjoy it and consider subscribing to the channel so you can catch the next one. Thanks, bye.